Chapter 11. Everything was perfect until that noise, the Joker thought. He looked up. Something had come through the skylight. That same dark something that was dropping to the floor. No, the Joker corrected himself. It wasn't just any old something. It was the Batman. He landed only a half-dozen feet away. He pointed his fist at the Joker. There was something attached to that guy's wrist. Was Batman going to shoot the Joker? He was too young to die. The Joker considered running, but Batman would nail him before he took a step. Mother mercy! Was this the end of little Rico? The Batman fired. The projectile split in two, each half and banged itself into the walls past the balcony on the other side of the Joker. The Joker realized there were wires attached to each of those spikes, and another wire leading from the Batman to a skylight entranceway. The Batman grabbed Viki and swung out along the escape wires he created for himself, plunging off the balcony and straight through an arched doorway marked exit. It took the Joker a second to recover. Those toys, he exclaimed at last. Where does he get those wonderful toys? He looked around at his boys. They seemed every bit as flabbergasted as he was. Well, don't just stand there, he yelled. Go and ask him. They went. Joker sighed. Did he have to think of everything around here? It took Viki a moment to realize she'd been rescued. Batman had put his arm around her, and a second later, they were off the balcony and out into Gotham Square. He let her go as they landed and pointed to a side alley. She ran the way he pointed as he lobbed a small disc into the entranceway behind them. A second later, the foyer was filled with smoke. Get in the car. Batman yelled at her. The car? Viki looked at all the cars parked along one side of the alley. Which car? She asked. She saw it a moment later. Oh, she added. There were a lot of cars here, but there was only one jet black super sleek sports car with customized bat hubcaps. The hood slid forward with barely a discernible whir, revealing what looked more like twin cockpits than drivers and passenger sides. Viki climbed into the passenger cockpit. Ignition. Batman whirred. The entire dashboard lit with a dozen different dials and indicators. A small light on the left-hand side flashed voice print OK. There was some sort of control board between the seats as well, full of lights and buttons and toggle switches. Ignition, a computerized voice replied. The engines revved as Batman vaulted into the other side. The doors lowered to seal them both inside as Batman instructed Viki to put on her seatbelt. The car squealed down the alleyway, straight toward the doorway they had so recently left, a doorway now full of choking goons. The goons scattered as Batman's car roared from the alley. Viki glanced in the rearview mirror. The Joker's henchmen were climbing into a van and a pair of cars. She noticed a flashing light to her right. She realized it was a turn signal. She glanced at the glowing speedometer. The car took the corner at 50 miles an hour. They turned into the heart of Gotham City. Viki realized with a shock that despite all that had happened, it was still only early evening, and barely after sunset. The streets were full of cars, the sidewalks and crosswalks full of pedestrians. She saw people running as the van behind them careened over a curb. Batman pushed his car even faster. Viki saw the blinking right turn signal a second time. But they must be going 90 by now. Even a car as aerodynamically designed as this couldn't turn at that speed. Batman flipped one of the many switches on the control panel between them. A line rocketed from Viki's side of the car, a line with a spike on the end that embedded itself into a brick wall beyond on the sidewalk. The car swung around the corner at the end of the line. Batman flicked another switch and the line dropped away. They were still doing 90. Damn, Batman yelled. They were in a blind alley. The road ended 100 yards ahead. He jammed on the brakes and pressed another button on the panel. As the wheels beneath slammed to a halt, Viki, the body of the Batman's car, lifted up and rotated 180 degrees so it was facing the other way. Batman pressed the accelerator and they were on their way again, out of the alley, headed toward Gotham Square. There were orange blinking lights ahead of them, some sort of night construction crew, Viki realized, working overtime to get their viewing stands ready in time for the Mayor Borg's beloved parade. A gigantic crane was backing down the street into the intersection, blocking both lanes, and they were headed straight for it. Batman gunned the engine, swerving to the left. There still wasn't enough room. He pumped the brakes as they careened toward the sidewalk. They stopped, inches away from the lamppost. Pedestrians and construction workers ran toward them, curious about the commotion. Viki glanced out of the back window. The van and the other two cars were gaining on them. She glanced over at Batman. There must be some way they could get out of here. Couldn't we? She began. He shook his head. Too many people. He pressed another button. The doors swirled open. Come on, he yelled as he leapt from the seat. Shields! He ordered his shields out as well. Shields, the mirror replied. Dark steel plates quickly climbed into place over the cockpit, the wheels, the exhaust system, like nothing so much as an impenetrable black cocoon. Viki didn't have time to watch any more. The Batman was already leading her a run into the construction site. She heard police sirens behind her. Good, she thought. Maybe the cops can slow down the Joker's goons. She didn't think for a second the police had chance of catching the Batman. They crossed the construction in less than a minute and turned down another street at a run, dodging open-mouthed pedestrians. An all-too-familiar car pulled out of a side street. Viki recognized four of the Joker's men riding inside. The goon in the driver's seat picked up a walkie-talkie and said something into it. The car turned toward them. Batman and Viki ran the other way. A store window exploded in front of them as the goons opened fire. Viki dove behind a parked car as the goons' car wheeled around the corner. A little later, a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, dressed in a ragged hand-me-down coat, was busy walking her doll around the corner. She was so lost in her play acting, she didn't even notice the bullets running feet. She looked up as Batman approached. Wide-eyed, she lifted her doll up so the masked man could get a better look. Is it Halloween? She asked. Batman smiled, motioning for Viki to follow him into an alley. She ran toward him. Her heart sank as she heard the squeal of tires behind her. The Joker's men were back for more. They drove by the alley, not able to stop in time. But this alley was a dead end too. And this time they had no supercar to save them. Batman looked up. Viki followed his gaze. There was a catwalk, but it was 5 stories up. Batman looked back at Viki. The eye holes in his mask were two pools of darkness. How much do you weigh? He snapped. Viki was a little startled. Even in this day and age, a woman didn't expect that sort of question. She stumbled. 108? He cocked his head a bit to one side as if performing some quick mental calculations. The bad guy's car wheeled back to the mouth of the alley, this time in reverse. They stopped the car in the alley's mouth, blocking the exit. The goons hauled out of the car. Viki looked back at Batman. He was holding some kind of bat-shaped spear gun attached to a thin nylon rope. He shot the projectile aloft. It conned the catwalk. He grabbed Viki around the waist. Hang on. He flicked something at his belt. Viki and Batman shot upward, almost as if they were fish being reeled in. A bullet whizzed angrily by her ear. They went up one story, two, but their flight was slowing. On the third floor up, they stopped. Viki realized whatever mechanism was reeling them in must not be able to take their combined weight. Viki felt a mixture of guilt and panic. There were sitting ducks up here. Should she have told him, Batman, how much she really weighed? Batman twisted around. Viki looked down and screamed. The goons all had their heavy artillery pointed at the two of them, but the bad guys were taking their time now, waiting for the twisting and turning to stop up there so they could easily kill them both. Whatever happens, Batman whispered hoarsely, don't let go. He attached something from around his waist and looked over Viki's belt. That's when he let go. Viki skyrocketed upward, shrieking as she went. She saw Batman beneath her, keep billowing as he fell 2 stories to the pavement. She cried again as her back slammed against the catwalk. But the rope bounced her up and down a bit, and she realized nothing was broken. There was a crash beneath her. She looked down to see the Batman had landed in the middle of a pile of garbage cans. The goons rushed over to him. He smashed a pair of them into a wall before he was even on his feet. But a third had found a lead pipe in the rubbish. He smashed it into the back of Batman's skull. Batman fell. The thugs circled closer. Viki felt so helpless up here. The rope had stopped its bouncing. She pulled herself onto the catwalk, then over onto the roof. But she didn't have a gun. What could she do? Through all this, she had managed to keep her camera bag. Maybe somehow there was something inside that could help. She looked down as she unzipped the case. The lead goon fired 2 shots point blank at the yellow and black insignia on Batman's chest. The body jerked. Viki leaned over the edge. Was she too late? The goon stopped. No blood. One of them said, Jeebus. Another one answered, Who is it? Check his wallet. Wait a minute. A third interrupted. He crouched down beside the body and poked at Batman's costume. What is it? The last other asked. Some kind of body armor or something. The kneeling man replied. He's human after all. The man who had shot him had said, courage back in his voice. Take the mask off. Body armor? Viki realized that must mean he was still alive. And she had thought of a way to distract the thugs and maybe get an exclusive for the Gotham Globe as well. They peeled off the mask, but his face was still in the shadows. Get out of the way, Lear yelled. I can't see him. That's when Viki set off the flash gun. The goons were startled. disoriented. "Darn it!" one of them yelled. "It's the girl!" A bullet careened off the cement ledge 3 inches from her face. She flashed the strobe again, this time taking a photo as well. She knew she was exposing herself, but she had to get this. All the thugs raised their guns and fired at once. The flashes stopped overhead. "Did you get her?" a voice asked. "I think so," a second answered. "Wax him." Batman opened his eyes as the 4 gunmen aimed their weapons at him. His right hand snaked up to grab the hood of the nearest one, spinning him around into the gunfire of the other 3. Then Batman was on his feet, using the brand new corpse for a shield. He heaved the lifeless excrement through the air. The body landed on top of one of his friends. The one who was still alive fell back over the garbage can to crack his head against the wall. He fell down, out cold. Batman was already on the 3rd piece of slime. He rabbit punched the slime's throat and gave his guy a good kick with a steel-toed boot as the thug went down. Now there was only one more little matter to take care of. Batman pulled his mask back into place as he turned to face his final business. The last piece of living trash had his gun out, but he was shaking too much to aim. Batman smiled. The trash screamed and ran. Batman noticed the strobe lights had started again overhead. Viki Vale was up there, taking pictures. He'd have to do something about that. The Batman had disposed of all the goons in a matter of seconds, and they looked up at her. She retreated from the edge so that Batman could no longer see her. He must know that she had been taking pictures, including some before he had put his mask back on. Pictures that were too valuable to lose. She quickly rewound the film and unloaded the camera. But where was the safest place for the film? Her alternatives were limited. She dropped the roll inside her blouse and started to run across the roof to a door on the far side of the building. Maybe this was the wrong thing to do after the Batman had saved her life, but there was something about the Batman. Something so familiar and so strange at the same time. She realized she didn't want these pictures so much for the glove as for herself. She needed to see his face. Once she developed the film, she would know the true identity of the Batman. Viki was gone. He could find her in a minute. For now, there were other things to worry about. He walked out of the alley and saw the Batmobile 2 blocks away. It was completely surrounded by police and curiosity seekers. A couple of the cops were actually crawling over the top of the car, trying to find a way in. And there was a gigantic tow truck backing down the far end of the street. The kind of truck they used to haul away tractor trailers, maneuvering to haul away the Batmobile. The Batman made a snoring sound inside his mask. There were always complications. Oh well. If he had wanted things to be simple, he would have gone into another line of work. He pressed a button on his utility belt. The miniature radio transmitter popped into his hand. He pressed the talk button. "Shields open," he ordered. "Shields open," the car's impure voice replied. The steel plates retracted into the doors and wheel wells. "Ignition," Batman said. "Ignition," the car replied. One of the cops, crawling across the hood, tried to get a look inside the darkened cockpit. "There's somebody in there," he yelled. The turbine engines revved, and the Batmobile started to roll, slowly at first, to allow the cops to roll off the car and the crowd to disperse. Then more quickly as the car pulled free of the throng. The left turn signal flashed as the Batmobile approached a second corner. Batman let the computer drive the car for the next few minutes. He needed the cops out of the way for a while, and the Batmobile made an excellent diversion. In the meantime, though, he had business that would not wait. Sirens wailed in the street below. Viki glanced over the ledge and saw the Batman's customized car tearing down the street, dodging a bus and two taxis, swooping around a gaggle of startled pedestrians. Well, at least Batman had gotten away. Now she had to find a way to get off the Gotham City skyline. The first door she had tried was locked. That was only to be expected, she guessed, but in the big city. But the first roof had connected to a second, with a jump of only a foot or two, and using an old dining room chair somebody had left up there, she'd managed to climb the 5 feet up onto a third, and this one had a fire escape that went all the way down. She gratefully started for the ground. The sirens vanished in the distance. From the intensity of the noise, it sounded as if there were 20 police cars chasing the Batman. She looked down. There was no one in the street below. She reached the bottom of the fire escape. It didn't quite reach the ground after all. There was a 5-foot drop to the pavement below. She'd have to jump. Why didn't people warn you about this sort of thing when you went into news photography? At least, Viki thought, she was wearing her sensible shoes. Her canvas bag slung over her shoulder. She grabbed the bottom iron rung of the fire escape and swung herself down to the catwalk. Down to the sidewalk. Now, she thought, to get out of here. She glanced quickly over her shoulder. It was too quiet around here. She wouldn't want to run into the Joker's men again, or the Batman now for that matter. She quickened her pace, turning her head back to look where she was going, but there was something in her way, something large and black. She couldn't stop herself. She walked, bodily, right into the Batman. The breath knocked out of her. She looked up into the masked face. Not even a thank you? He asked. Thank you? She thought. For saving her life? Viki became instantly defensive. Probably because she knew Batman was right. Well, I think you might thank me, she retorted. You were as good as dead. Batman stared down at her. His face looked so impassive behind that mask. You look a little more than 108, was his only reply. Viki heard the sirens again. They were coming this way, fast. Batman's hands were on her shoulders. You better come with me, he said gently. She guessed that she should. The sirens weren't more than a block or two away. She didn't want to spend the rest of her day trying to explain things to the police. Where are we going? She asked. The Batman's only answer was to take her hand and pull her to the corner. He led her out onto the street. She looked up to see the Batmobile screaming toward them. They had to get out of its way. Instead, Batman stepped directly into the headlight beams. Stop, he demanded. Brakes squealed. Batman's grip was firm on her hand, keeping her from running. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, the car had stopped, 3 feet away from her toes. Batman pointed for her to get into the passenger seat as he leapt behind the wheel. She climbed into the car as the sirens rounded a nearby corner. She could see the flashing lights behind them now. There were at least 4 cop cars, the closest less than a half block away. The doors closed overhead, and Batman pushed the accelerator to the floor. The engines roared. Viki could have sworn she could see flames shooting from the car's exhaust. The car started to move faster and faster down Broad Avenue. Batman told her to put on her seatbelt. She had just that, glancing over at the speedometer. It looked as if they were doing 140. She looked in the rearview mirror. She saw only one flashing light far behind them. A minute later, even that was gone. They had outrun them all. They were driving out of the city. Batman slowed the car on a deserted stretch of road bordered on both sides by tall and ancient pines. He flicked one of the other switches on his control console. Viki suddenly found the window before her had become completely opaque. She couldn't see where they were or where they were going, which she realized must be precisely what Batman had in mind. "This is kidnapping," she pointed out. "Looks like it," Batman agreed. He flicked on a light between them, a light so bright that Viki could no longer look at him. She blinked, trying to adjust to the brightness, then noticed that she could see out of the front glass on her side again. Not that she wanted to. It looked as if they were driving straight for a sheer cliff wall. She looked back to Batman, her eyes finally adjusting to the new illumination. She saw him smile as he hit the gas. They rushed toward the cliff face. Viki screamed.